Okay, great. Let's get going. So hi, everyone. My name is Jess Harley. I'm a life design educator here in the Life Design Lab, and I'm going to be leading the panel conversation today with our three amazing employers that will be sharing some great information around recruitment, application processes, and all of that. There will be time at the end for you to drop in any questions that you have into the chat. So please feel free to think through some questions and then feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll make sure we get them answered throughout our time. To get us started, we are going to have each of our panelists go through and introduce themselves, share a little bit more about where you work and your current role at your company. So Joshua, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Jess. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thank you for participating. My name is Joshua Reiter. I have two different perspectives that I'm here for. One is that I started a software as a service company. We can talk a little bit about what that means and how that's different than a software development business, but it's right here in Baltimore, Maryland, and we put admissions applications online for colleges and boarding schools, mostly within the United States, but also outside of the United States as well. And in addition to that, I am a senior lecturer at Johns Hopkins University in the Whiting School of Engineering, and I teach some business classes in the Center for Leadership Education.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joshua. Jessica, would you like to go next?
Sure. Let me know if you can all hear me, but my name is Jessica, identify as she, her, hers. I've been at Bloomberg for about 2 years now, working under the entry-level recruiting team here. Previously, before that, started off my career at L'Oreal and then kind of transitioned my role here to Bloomberg. Wanted to say thank you to JHU for having us. I'm super excited to be here today, engage all of you, get to know you, answer any of your questions. So super excited to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Damini, you can go next.
Thanks so much, Jess. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Damini Agarwal. I work as the Director of Product Development at a medical devices company called Infinite Biomedical Technologies that's based out of Baltimore. I did my master's in biomedical engineering from Hopkins, and I was an international student. So I've definitely seen the world from both sides of the fence and looking forward to answering your questions on it.
Awesome. Thank you. So Damini, we'll have you go first with our first question, which is what unique skills do international students possess that you are looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think international students talk about it enough in their applications or during their interview process. But each of them is coming from a very different part of the world and, is adapting, learning about their new environment and growing very quickly, all of it through self-motivation. And those are ideal skills that any recruiter is looking for, at least in their, in their workspaces. You're looking for an employee that can adapt, that is willing to learn and is self-motivated. And international students have already demonstrated this by means of, just by the fact that they've moved to a different place to pursue an education. So I would say these are probably the three top skills that international students bring that they should talk about more.
Fantastic. Joshua, you want to add in anything to that?
Sure. We're very fortunate. Well, first of all, we're a small company. I wouldn't say we're fortunate about that, but we're a very small company. There are 5 of us, and that's typically about where we typically are, somewhere between 4 and 6. And of those 5, 2 students are both from China. One started with us, about 5 years ago, and then when his visa ran out, he actually continues to work with us from Beijing. And we have another student who is from Guangzhou, who is actually, we were able to sponsor him and he was able to get an H-1B. So we are very pleased to have people on our team who are outside of the United States because our clientele is outside the United States. About 20% of our applicants to our clients are colleges and boarding schools, come from outside the US. So to have a very broad and a very diverse perspective is important, not only in people's skills and talents and expertise, but also just in a very broad perspective from, from the world, like how are we going to recruit these students and what works in the United States may not work in other parts of the world. So we're very pleased and we really do enjoy having students from outside the United States who then become employees. They're students first and then they're employees.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Jessica?
So Bloomberg does have a pretty unique perspective on international students. So we do look at international student applications pretty much the same exact way that we do for those that are applying in the US. So we really don't differentiate based on if applicant is international or if the country you previously worked in or had experience in is outside of the US. Truly doesn't matter. We do hire internationally very regularly, and a number of our population at Bloomberg is actually hired internationally. We do offer for full sponsorship for all of our roles here at Bloomberg, and even have an immigration team that will work with you through the entire process. So I would say, to kind of highlight, if you've had previous work experience in CS, or either working to get a degree in CS, have completed a boot camp, or want a career as a software engineer, shouldn't really deter you from applying with us. I know not every company has different stipulations to international students, but fortunately we don't. So we'll take a look at your application exactly the same way as we do for students applying here in the US.
Fantastic. And that helps to transition a little bit into some of our next questions. What are the most important things that you're looking for when reviewing resumes? And Jessica, if you want to take this one first, I know you kind of were just talking through some of that you didn't separate out the international versus the other students. So, but what specifically should students be putting on their resume?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So here at Bloomberg, we do look for students to have some kind of background in CS or related to CS. So whether that be previous internship, full-time, part-time, co-op, or research experience of some sort, it's good to put on your resume. If you don't have that type of experience, having previously done a boot camp, getting a certification related to CS is generally what we look at when reviewing resumes, and we like to see it highlighted there too if your previous background was not in CS or within software and engineering. In addition to that, we also look at if a candidate applying is well-rounded. So have they done previous volunteering work? Are they involved with on-campus student organizations? Are they involved with off-campus student organizations perhaps? Do they have work done outside of work? So an example could be a lot of candidates that we see applying may not have a lot of work experience, but have a ton of project work done in school or on their own time, have either developed applications or have done some sort of programming of some sort. So those are all key things that we're looking while we're viewing all of the resumes and applicants that are applying to us.
Great, thank you. Damini, do you anything to add to the things you're looking for in resumes?
Yes, for sure. I think the first thing that I look for when looking at resumes is how readable it is. It should be clear, concise, with with the right amount of information on it that highlights a wide variety of things: your academic background, your past work experience, any projects or internships that you may have done, and in addition, any extracurricular work that you're involved in. Because what we're hoping to see from someone's resume is, get a snapshot of the last few years of your life and why you're a good fit for the position. So anything that you can tell us that highlights why your skill set matches what's in the job description is always very helpful.
And Joshua?
Yeah, all of the things we've heard so far, yes, absolutely. We are looking for, typically we hire either in two different areas. One are coders. So we're just looking at your background. We understand that you may not have a lot of, if you're coming right out of either undergraduate or graduate school, you may not have a lot of full-time work experience, but we just look to see what your background is, what languages you know, what databases you know, what you prefer. And then certainly if we're also higher on the business development, customer service, project management side. So we're also looking at those experiences. But ultimately what we're really looking for are people who want to work in the company. We know that you're probably applying to many, many different companies. We know we're very small. We know that this is probably not your first choice, but ultimately what we want to do is spend our time reviewing, recruiting people who are interested in working for us, and those that can exemplify that this is the firm that they'd like to work for. Just makes it much easier for us and much easier for you.
Fantastic. And we received a question from the chat about what about work experience gained internationally? Is that kind of weighed similarly, differently from kind of experience gained here in the US? I see a lot of head shaking, so go ahead. Damini, I see you and also unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. I think we weigh work experience the same, whether it's in the US or whether it's abroad, because ultimately what we care about is the core skill set and how you've developed it, what kind of real world experience you've gained. And the fact that you've gained your real world experience in a different setting allows you to bring a different perspective to the table, which we really appreciate. So, if you have international work experience, please highlight it.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
and then go ahead, Joshua.
Real quick. We actually hired a summer intern. We were doing some business in Japan, and he actually is Japanese. And it turns out that he had worked for a company for a number of years. And when we were telling him about this opportunity that we had, he really helped us because we didn't have a lot of the knowledge about how to work with firms outside of the United States. And that was really something that we probably would have had to pay a lot of money for. And yet he was a summer intern who just happened to have worked in some companies in Japan.
Fantastic. So definitely make sure you include that experience on your resume, and it is weighed very similarly to experience that you're gained here as well. Thank you for those answers. And then when looking at the interview process, what types of things specifically are you looking for? Joshua, I have you already spotlighted, so I'm going to have you start with this one.
Yeah, I'll start again. We really want people who understand our company and that are interested in applying to our company. So, we certainly ask lots of questions, but we also expect you to know something about the company. We don't expect you to be an expert, but to not know what we do or how we do it, that's kind of a red flag for us. So during the interview process, especially if we're looking for technical people, we are looking for people who are able to, as we say, talk the talk, that they understand various languages, they understand various databases, they have some knowledge of, we actually have a quiz, I don't know what you call that, if you get called back for a second round, just to see, not so much that we see how you're coding, we just want to see your thought process, to see how you would handle abstract questions that come up and how you resolve those. So we're really looking for people who are prepared, who have thought about why they want to work with our team. For the most part, it's rare that we find somebody who isn't qualified, but the trick is to find people who are a good fit. And the only way that you're a good fit is if you really understand the firm and understand who we are.
Jessica, would you like to take this question next?
Yeah, of course. So I would say for Bloomberg on our entry level side and for our senior engineers, if you are applying to those positions as well. So we do look for 4 pillars that we're kind of assessing through our interview process. One of them is coding fluency. So as Joshua kind of mentioned, we do kind of have to be skilled technically in order to pass on to the next round of interviews with us. We do specifically look for algorithm and database knowledge, and also problem solving skills and communication skills as well. So for us, it's important when assessing a candidate that each candidate possesses all of these skills, and we're looking at each candidate holistically instead of just seeing if this candidate can code really, really well, but doesn't really show a collaborative effort in their interviews. Just like a tip for all of you, so all of our interviews specifically, and I'm sure many companies conduct their interviews very similarly, they're very interactive. It's almost as if you're working with the engineers on a problem at hand. So to kind of stand out, what they're really looking for is to see if you can take hints, guidance, and also communicate effectively on these problems that you're solving throughout the interview process. So I think it can help you stand out not only with our interview process, but also with any technical interview process that you're going through and interviewing with any company.
Fantastic. And Damini?
Thanks, Jess. I think I concur with both the speakers ahead of me that, those are some of the key things we look for as well. We hire over a wide variety of positions because as a upper limb prosthetic manufacturer, we make artificial hands. So that includes a lot of different areas, both in engineering, in clinical services, business development. So I think our interview process is different depending on the kind of position that you're interviewing for. But I think one of the key things that we look for is how you, as Joshua mentioned, how you demonstrate you're a good fit for the position and that you've thought about whether you really want this position or not. Because more often than not, and that relates to one of the questions that came in the chat, we find that international students sometimes don't necessarily know what they want, where they want to work and why they want to work there. And that I think can be a big red flag in my opinion. The other thing that I think we look for in interviews is, again, how clearly can you articulate your past background and why you're a good fit, and how can you do it in a concise manner that matches up with what you've already provided in your resume.
This is all great stuff. I know the next question I have was a little bit around things that you've already touched. So talking around interviews and the types of questions that are answered. So I know Jessica mentioned having some technical type of interview questions that would be offered. Joshua, I think you did as well, like actually doing a practicum while sitting there. Are there any things or common questions outside of why do you want to work here? Why do you want to work in this role that students should prepare for in maybe that first round interview, the kind of screening round interview that you'd be looking for? Damini, you want to go first?
Yes, of course. I think outside of why you want to work here, we typically ask our candidates, what are your top 3 technical skills, if it's a technical position we're hiring them for, as well as what are the top 3 soft skills that they have, because we lay emphasis on both sides, not just the technical. I think it's very important to as Jessica mentioned, be able to articulate yourself well, be able to work in a team, and asking soft skill related questions allows us to gauge that. The other one we also like to ask is, what is someone's working style? What role do they typically play on a team? And it's because depending on what their response is, there really is no right or wrong response. Often candidates get very confused, but it's more so for us to understand how their manager can manage them well to make sure they are successful, and how we can put them in an environment where they thrive. So, if you put someone that's not really a team leader in a team leader position, they're going to be very, very, they're not going to be a good fit for it. So this question allows us to kind of gauge how they're going to fit into our team. And, we have a mix of both people on the team. There are people that told us that, hey, I love taking the lead and doing things. The people that have told us that, hey, I'm more, I enjoy doing hands-on work. And I don't enjoy taking leadership responsibility. And both of those answers are perfectly okay. You have to just be honest.
I think that's a great point. You want to show your best self and be honest. You don't want to say something that doesn't align with actually who you are. Joshua?
Yeah, I would agree with Damini. I think, it's key. I think when you go in, I certainly remember being on the other side of the table going into an interview, and you're constantly thinking, what's the right answer? What's the right answer? And for many of our questions, there isn't a right answer. We're just really trying to get to know who you are. As Damini said, how do you work on teams? Do you like to be the lead? Are you not a leader? We understand at the beginning you're not going to be the leader. We want you to learn a little bit more about our company and a little bit more about our clients and our systems before you become a lead, but we just want to get to know you better. So really come in as best as you can, be relaxed. We don't ask, and I know some companies do, and we tell our prospective candidates right from the start, we're not going to ask you any tough questions like how many ping pong balls fill up a 747. I understand that some companies do, and that's fine. What we're really looking for is fit. And the way that we do that is we just get to know you, and we really want to get to know you, not somebody that you think we're looking for, because we're not. We're actually looking for talented people who have a very broad and a diverse perspective.
Great. And Jessica?
Yeah, I kind of second everything that all the speakers said, but to kind of add on for our interview process, I think one thing that many candidates overlook is a very simple question that they're asked in the very, very beginning of an interview, and that's, can you explain previous work experience and can you kind of walk through your resume with me? I think that's typically where a lot of candidates struggle the most because they don't prepare enough talking about themselves during an interview process. And if there's something that you don't feel comfortable answering or maybe don't want the interviewer to know, we always suggest you take it off your resume before you go into an interview. Being familiar with your resume, being able to kind of go into depth about the previous work you have listed is crucial, because specifically for our engineers in our interview process, for instance, they'll ask you questions on it. They love to look at your resume beforehand, before you even interview, and they'll see exactly the type of work you've previously been doing and then tailor their questions and even their technical questions to what you say during a resume review. My biggest suggestion for all of you, and I've interviewed at many companies, I've also interviewed quite a ton of different candidates, is to practice all different types of questions, from behavioral to technical and everything in between. Each company tweaks their technical processes a little bit differently and does things a little bit differently. So try to be as prepared as you can. Make your answers and as natural as possible when answering them, and just be confident when kind of answering these questions during your interviews.
Thank you all. I appreciate that. I think one thing at the Life Design Lab that we say you always should prepare are two questions that we've touched on today, which is tell me about yourself. That is almost always going to be the first question in some form. Walk me through your resume, tell me about yourself, what do you like to do in your free time, like stuff like that will be kind of the first question. And then the why do you want to work here, why do you want this specific role? And so making sure that you have clear reasons for why that company, how do their values align with yours, how does the role align with what you think you want to do, or the future you want to do, the future of the work you want to do, and making sure for your tell me about yourself, it's your elevator pitch. It's that 60 to 90-second elevator pitch where you are saying the best things about yourself. So making sure before any interview that you practice both of those and have very clear reasons for, why you are looking at this specific role is going to be very key as you all are going through any interview processes. The next question I have, which is kind of almost one of our last questions, but what things should international students prepare for if they receive an offer? Jessica, would you be able to share kind of that process that they should start to, if they get an offer, what things should they be ready to send your way, or should they be prepared for?
Yeah, definitely. So I can give a little bit of insight into when you receive an offer with us. So you do have flexibility for when it comes to different start dates. So for instance, for us, we have multiple different start dates each month throughout the entire year. So start to kind of think about, and as you're starting to talk to your recruiters, when you want to need to travel home, go home, visit your family, etc., and you're able to do so with us. If you were going to accept an offer with Bloomberg, for instance, start thinking about travel plans internationally or traveling home, and then make sure that your recruiter is basically aware of that. And I would also say, before you even start the recruiting process with us, I would say to sit down and make sure that you talk to your career centers, make sure you have a clear understanding of maybe what types of visas you need, or maybe other stipulations that could arise, and discuss that with your recruiter as well, as you're kind of starting to go through that recruiting process with us. So there's not much you have to do with us, and like I previously mentioned before, we do have an immigration team that will work with you. So regardless of if you need to apply for an H-1B visa and what that process looks like, they kind of work hand in hand with you to take you along that process.
Fantastic. Thank you. Damini?
Yeah, I mean, to add on to what Jessica just mentioned, I think as an international student, you have to own your immigration process. You know, it is very, very important that you know beforehand what the company needs to do for you. Sometimes companies don't necessarily, as Jessica mentioned, Bloomberg has an immigration department. A lot of small companies don't. In which case you kind of have to self-direct and let the team know that this is what is coming up, this is a deadline, and most companies will work with you. So, but you need to be the person that brings the information and kind of takes the ownership of getting things done. That is very important. With respect to us, again, we've we work extensively with international students, both at an internship as well as a full-time level. So we will work with you to make sure that, your start dates match up against when your EAD is active, when your OPT is going to be starting, when your CPT is starting. So we have that kind of flexibility, but we also need to see that initiative and motivation from your side, because I think it's a two-way street. So, if you have questions, we're happy to guide you. We work very extensively with the Hopkins as well as the Life Design Lab, as well as I've worked very closely with the Office of International Students myself. They're a very, very good resource for information on, the legalities of working as an international student. So reaching out to them in advance and not waiting till the last minute are, I think, some of the key things that I would mention as, as feedback, because these things take time.
Those are great keys of advice. So earlier is better, and then you being the one who's taking the initiative is going to be key. Joshua?
Yeah, I would agree. Office of International Students, they have been, I think they're wonderful. They've really helped the students who then become employees with us. Make sure CPT, OPT, if you're going to use that, you've got to let us know, when does that start? When does that end? I understand, if you're technical, you get 1 + 2. If you're not technical, it's usually 1 year. And then certainly if you're going to, in order for you to get paid, you need a social security number. So you have to get that as well. And you can work through the Office of International Students to explain how to do that. And then ultimately let us know. I mean, we don't expect you day one to tell us whether or not you're going to wish to stay on as an H-1B, but it comes up very quickly and you only get 3 chances. So it's a lottery. And as I said, we were very fortunate on the second round with one of our current employees. We were able to, win the lottery, and he actually is has an H-1B, which is awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you. So now feel free, those are the main questions I had prepared. So feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat, and I will go through them as they come in. So I know Damini touched on this one, or what are some red flags commonly seen among international candidates? Joshua, did you want to add anything for kind of red flags that you might see within international students?
So unfortunately, we have had some issues, but for the most part, it should be for any student, not just international students, but be upfront and honest about what your expectations are and what your role is going to be and how long you want to keep that job. We've had some interns who have tried very hard to get us to, I see how I can explain this, perhaps provide information that's not 100% accurate in order for people to either get to stay and we just can't do that. As much as we like you and as much as we would love you to continue, we can't do that. So don't even ask an employer to do that. They would never do anything like that. But also just be upfront. Like if you know you only want to stay for 1 year, then say that. And it's possible that the company won't hire you, and that's fine. But at least then somebody else has an opportunity to take the position who might want to be able to stay more than 1 year. So I would just say, be upfront and honest right from the start.
Fantastic. Jessica, anything else that you'd like to add to red flags?
I would say that for us, we typically don't see any red flags with international students applying with us, but I will speak for majority of candidates that are applying with us. I will say for a lot of international students, they kind of shy away from putting their international work experience or previous work experience on their resume and kind of talking through that. So I would say that that's like one of the biggest things to not shy away from. And as you're starting to kind of research different companies and research their interview processes, make sure that you're kind of researching pretty thoroughly about the company, because there are companies out there that will take you if you're an international student and sponsor you. So I would say that that's like the number one thing that we probably see as a quote unquote red flag for us.
Awesome. Damini, do you have anything else that you want to add? I don't want to leave you out. I know you've mentioned it a little bit.
Oh, it's all good. I think we've covered the question. Thank you for asking though.
Awesome. Okay. So the next question is, a student has worked in a research lab but doesn't have relevant experience into the industry that they're most interested in, and was wondering, does that count of working in a research lab count as work experience? Damini, you want to take this one?
Sure. And I worked in a research lab before I started working full time. So I will tell you that yes, research lab experience counts very, very much towards your work experience. You are doing work, except in an academic setting. It's not in an industrial setting, but you're developing the same skill sets, which is what you should be highlighting in your interview. You're learning how to work in a team, because research lab typically comprises of multi-team projects. You're learning to work with people from very different backgrounds. You might be a molecular engineer, someone else might be a devices engineer on your team. So you're learning to speak others' languages, which is again very important. It's an important skill set that employers are looking for. And you're building your technical skill set that is hopefully contributing towards the position that you're looking at. So you want to highlight all of these things, and please don't leave your research experience out. It is very important.
Awesome. I think that all three of the panelists would agree. Definitely include that on your resume and talk through those transferable skills. Exactly. So then the next question, as I know most people can see, but what are employers looking for in cover letters specifically? So are you looking for more about what they can bring to the role, or more why they are interested in the role? Jessica, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I would say for us, for cover letters, so we do take a look at them. I will say for Bloomberg specifically, we do weigh in more on your resume and what you are putting on your resume, but we're more than happy to take a look at your cover letter as well. If you are going to include a cover letter, my tips and advice for all of you is to make sure that you're tailoring it to the company. So why you're interested in that specific company. I've seen a lot of cover letters come through where they are very, very generic, and you can see they're just kind of copy and paste, which is fine, as long as pieces of it are going to be tailored, right? To give a little bit of insight into Bloomberg, we actually hand pick and also hand review every single resume and cover letter that comes through our ATS system. So if we receive 40,000 applications in a year, all 40,000 applications will be reviewed by both an HR and also an engineer on our team. So it is going to be looked at very thoroughly. And each company does this a little bit differently. But if you are going to submit a cover letter, understanding what the company does, why you're interested, and also highlighting exactly what was said in the chat. So like what you can bring to the table, what your previous experience is, and how you can be an asset to this company is definitely key things you should be highlighting in that cover letter.
Joshua, Damini, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would just say absolutely that cover letter should link somewhat to our company and the position. Something that's so generic. I mean, if you have a really good resume, we might overlook that because we understand that you're applying to multiple organizations. But ultimately, what we're looking for are people who are interested. So as an aside, not every company has an HR department. We're very small. If you know about our company and you send something in and we're not necessarily recruiting at that time, just because we don't respond immediately, we don't respond in a short period of time, doesn't mean we're not interested. It just means that we have, it might be our busy season. We just don't have time for that. But even during recruiting season, it couldn't hurt to follow up because then we know, okay, this person's really interested. It may not be that we're not interested. It's just we have lots of things going on. So if you're still interested, just let us know and we'll tell you. Oh, thank you for your patience. We are interested. It'll take another week or so.
Yeah, the other thing that I will add is that I personally look at cover letters as it's very similar to your statement of purpose that you draft when you're applying to university. You're kind of highlighting why you're a good fit. And it's the same principle again, when you're applying to a company, it allows you to make your first ever pitch to the person that is looking at your application. And it allows you to communicate, why you're a good fit there, as Joshua and Jessica mentioned. So taking the time to add a line or two about what the company does or what about the company really interests you shows us that, you're not making a whimsical decision, that this was a well thought out decision on your part and that you've done your research. So you know what's expected out of you. And, you're already, I think, a good cover letter, I think, can bring a lot of attention to your application and allow us to look at it more closely. So, I would try to draft a good cover letter.
Yeah. It pulls it all together. It's those things that you can't say on your resume. And that is the reason why that's your why. Why are you interested in this role? Why are you interested in this company? So definitely spend time on tailoring your cover letter to each role, speaking to why you're interested, as well as the skills that you potentially could bring to the organization. Any last questions from students? All right, so feel free, if you have any other questions, drop them in the chat, but I'll have each of you go through and just share final pieces of advice as students are searching for either internships or full-time opportunities in our international students. Damini, you're up first because you're right on the screen.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jess. I think, looking back at my experience as an international student, I think you have to be smart about how you're looking for jobs. You need to make sure that you're looking for positions that are going to get you, or, that are willing to take on candidates that have immigration obligations. And you should be tailoring your search so that you, at least my experience is that it's, as an international student, you have to match the technical skills of the position very well. So if you're not doing that already on the paper, then I think it's better for you to focus your applications with positions that you really match well, because that's just how the process is going to work, and that increases the likelihood of you getting callbacks from the companies that you're applying to. So be smart about your application, and spend the time to figure out which companies are a good fit for you.
Great advice. Jessica, final piece of advice for international students as they're searching.
Yeah, definitely. I would say I have two. So I have two pieces of advice that I would give all of you. The first is, as you're starting to kind of engage within the recruiting processes, check your emails multiple times a day, respond to emails to a timely manner, look at your spam folders, etc. I can't tell you how many candidates I've had, and I'm talking about hundreds during a fall season, who just simply miss an opportunity to interview because they didn't check their email or they respond months later. Opportunities do come and go, unfortunately, and you have to sometimes take them as soon as they're presented to you. You'll also start to kind of receive a huge influx of emails that will need to be read and actioned on quickly when you receive an offer, not just with Bloomberg, but with any company. And sometimes those emails have really, really important information that we need you to either fill out or follow up on. So I would say emails would come first. And secondly, my second piece of advice to all of you is, as you're starting to interview or kind of look for roles, our best interviews I've always seen come through from those that are very confident and well prepared. We've had candidates come in and interview with us once, twice, even 3 times before they receive an offer. So just because it doesn't work out the first time doesn't mean there's no possibility at that company. Just for all of your knowledge, I do keep in contact with candidates months, even a year down the line, and have them reapply and re-interview, and have had them have an offer with us. So I would say, don't get discouraged if things don't work out the first time. Sometimes things happen for a reason, or for sake of better words, everything kind of aligns itself at some point. So I would say, don't get discouraged if it doesn't work out the very first time you interview with a company.
That's other great advice, and maintaining those relationships can really come in handy down the road as well. So thank you. And Joshua.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that I think happens, and happened to me when I was interviewing, 100 years ago, sometimes you leave an interview and you think, wow, everybody liked me, we were having a great time, and I'm sure I'm going to get a call back, and then you're shocked when you don't. And I think what tends to happen is, what you can't see on your side of the desk is what we're looking for is not only, is this, a terrific person, but is there a good fit? And the best way to make sure that there's a good fit, and I wish I knew this when I was applying, and it's this sort of thing where you give advice, but don't give advice if you wouldn't do it yourself. And I still think about this now. Whenever you go in for an interview, understand what is your objective. And I ask this to students, not just people who are applying, but when we're helping people prepare for interviews. There are lots of objectives. They say, oh, we want them to get to know me and things like that. Yes. Ultimately, your objective is by the time that you leave that interview room, you want the recruiter to say, wow, we want that person because they really shine. They're so much better than anybody else. So how do you do that? Every time you're answering a question, make sure you use that as an opportunity, and I don't mean this literally, but to be able to say, and that's why you want me. So even as Jess said, one of the first questions that's asked is, tell us a little bit about yourself, just to kind of warm up. If people are a little bit nervous, it's an easy question to start with. And sometimes people go on, and it's fine, but they don't use that as an opportunity to say, let me tell you about myself and how I fit in this company and why I want to be in this company. And then tell us about your experiences. If it's research, it's research. If it's summer internships, and I did this, this, and this, and this is what I love, and this is why I have the skills and things that will work within your firm. So remember your objective and try as best you can, without being too obvious, that every time you're asked a question, use that as an opportunity to promote yourself into that job. Even though you may think it's like just a generic question, oh, hi, how are you? And just getting to know you, use that as an opportunity to say, and that's why you want me here.
These are all great pieces of advice. And it gave our students some time to think of some more questions. So we got 2 more that came in through the chat. The first question that came in was talking a little bit about work experience, and when job descriptions often say we need 2 to 3 years of experience, but the students obviously are coming right out of either their master's program or undergrad programs and might only have 1 year experience. They were asking, is this a strict kind of limit in your cases? Because I know each company is going to be slightly different. Or is it just more of like a suggestion amount of years of experience? So Joshua, you want to take this one first?
Sure. First of all, I'd be upfront, right? Again, if you're really interested in the job, you see that, wow, I meet all of these criteria, but and whether it's the 2 to 3 years or could be something else, I would be right up front and say, here's why I'm a great fit. I don't meet this. Is that going to be a problem, or is there some way that I'm still able to interview? So I think as long as you're upfront about it and we know that somebody's really interested, we're willing to take a look.
Great. Damini?
Yeah, absolutely. The way I think I would look at it is that, sorry, I lost my chain of thought. Can you come back to me after Jessica, please, while I get my thoughts together?
Yep.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah. So you're
Okay.
talking about years of experience and if it's like a set in stone or like more of a suggestion.
Yeah, definitely. I will say for Bloomberg specifically, so if you look at any of our entry-level software engineering roles, so we don't have a specific year or length of time that you have had to have previous work experience. And that is because we do recruit for general software engineering positions. So as you start going through the interviewing process, once you receive an offer, you go through a training program and then you get matched onto a team. So as you're starting to interview with us, you're not quote unquote interviewing with the hiring manager or the team that you're specifically going to be placed on. So we do really look at resumes that have previous work experience, identifying, maybe certain projects that you've worked on if you don't have relevant work experience, or maybe you're switching career paths. So you could come from maybe a business background and you want to switch into engineering, but you've gone through a boot camp. So listing that on your resume, like any relevant work experience or any relevant, I guess like any relevant like adjectives that you have related to software engineering, definitely place that onto your resume because we take a look at all of it. So it's not just strictly looking at, okay, does this person have 3 years worth of work experience? Yes, they're going to be hired. We take into consideration so many other pieces when reviewing all of our applications.
Awesome.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think we look at when we're drafting our job description, I think that's our wish list that comes from from the hiring manager, is that, okay, these are all the ideal things, but if you set out to look for a candidate that matches every single line item on that job description, probably never going to find that person. So, I would say that use the requirements as kind of a guideline. And again, as Jessica mentioned, we follow a similar hiring practice where we don't, if you haven't met 2 to 3 years, you're not selected, or if you have met 2 to 3 years, you are selected. We have a more quantitative grading scheme for each candidate where we are looking at all other parts of your application, not just, that one specific requirement. So even say, let's say you're not meeting one requirement exactly, but maybe you're meeting some other, a whole bunch of other requirements more than the other candidates, that automatically, makes you a better candidate. So I would still apply. There's actually a statistic that that women tend to match the requirements up to 90% in order to apply for a position, which is why, and male gender typically tries to match a smaller portion of them, and this is just by nature of personality. So what we actually try to do is reduce how much criteria we lay out in our job description that candidates are expected to meet, so that it prevents us from unconsciously biasing towards one candidate or biasing our application pool as well.
That's a great point. The biggest thing I always say is apply. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get declined. So you might as well apply if you're really interested in a role. Still apply even if there is that kind of 2 to 3 years, because I think Damini was saying, that's very common to put yourself out rather than letting the recruiters take you out of the pool of applicants.
Yeah, and if you're really interested in the job, let us know that. I mean, that's critical. So if you're missing 1 or 2 requirements, but you're great in all the other areas, that's important for us to know.
Yeah, great point. The next question that came in was talking more about if you don't have the exact experience in the area that you're interested in, you have the basic educational background, but you might not have worked in that area before. How should you articulate that well to make sure that it showcases you're a good candidate? Jessica, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I would definitely say list out your specific experience in whether that was a project or previous experience that you've had related to software engineering. So for instance, if you were working in a project, specifically list out what was your impact in that project. That's really what we're looking for as we're starting to kind of review your resume and also kind of talk to you through your interview process as well. It's great if you've had previous work experience, but that previous work experience might not be as relevant to the position that you're currently applying for. So kind of try to tailor it as much and best as possible as you can, I would say. I think our strongest candidates do come from backgrounds outside of CS usually, and they traditionally or untraditionally sometimes don't have a background in CS, and that's totally okay. Shouldn't deter you from applying and kind of shooting your shot with us at all.
Awesome. Any other suggestions?
Yeah, the one comment that I'll make is again about skills transference. It's very rare that you worked in a space where you haven't developed some skills that are applicable to a different space that you're trying to apply for. So if it's not matching very well, highlighting, the skills transference aspect of your previous job and how maybe you develop critical thinking skills. Maybe you were good at solving problems. Maybe you were able to talk to different people on your team and bring them all on the same page. Those are all skills that are universally applicable. It doesn't matter whether, you're working in the automotive space or the business space or the sales space, it all comes together. It's useful everywhere. So in cases where there isn't an exact technical match, highlighting some of the other transferable skills can be very helpful in making your candidature stronger.
Thank you. And so there was just another question added to the chat, talking a little bit about how long or how much time are recruiters willing to give international students for joining their organization from previous employment. For instance, it sounds like this might be a more personal question, but can a job be offered a year ahead or more while a candidate is completing a position, especially on specific visa type? Jessica, this might, and Damini, you can go ahead too, because I know that you just unmuted. So go ahead, you can answer the question. I was going to say, and Jessica, you might have some insight too from Bloomberg.
Yeah, I think again, for us, we're generally very flexible. So if you're a good fit, there are, it is possible that we might be able to offer you a year in advance if you're willing to wait for that long, for the position to fill in. So it really depends on what our needs are at that moment. For example, I got an offer from the company that I'm working at a year before I actually joined the company, saying that, they wanted me to join the team once I graduated from school. So it is very likely. That is why internships can be really helpful, because more often than not, the company that you're interning with or you've got in a position with might make you an offer even before you graduated from school, because they want their interns to continue working with them since they've already had a chance to work with you. But again, I would say it's very company specific.
Yeah, and to kind of jump in here and to kind of add on, so specifically for Bloomberg, so talk to your recruiter, be as open and honest as you can be. And if you do know your specific needs or requirements that you need to have done, or a certain application that you need to have filled out by a certain time, whatever that may be, talk to your recruiter. We're here to kind of help you and guide you through that process as well. So as long as you're kind of communicating that to us, it shouldn't be an issue at all. Like I previously mentioned, at Bloomberg, we have multiple start dates each month throughout the entire year. So essentially, if you interview now, you could start December of 2023. And if it's a really strong candidate and someone that we want to keep in touch with, or if we want to give an offer to for 2024 positions, we will. So that shouldn't be an issue at all, as long as you are open and honest with us, and we can help you out throughout the entire process, definitely.
Yeah, and for us, it's not uncommon that we may make an offer in fall recruiting for a position that starts after they graduate in the spring. What we sometimes will do, and we'll use that as an advantage and say, we'd like you to start whatever it is, July 1, but if you're available next semester and you don't have a lot of credits, you could start working for us part-time, get to know us, get to learn a little bit about our system, so that when you start July 1, you can hit the ground running. I would also suggest, and this actually happened to us, and it fortunately worked out very well, please keep us up to date on your plan. So for instance, we had one person, the person that's now working with us from Beijing, who's worked for us for almost 6 years now. I guess we knew he was graduating in December, but we didn't know what his plan was. And we fortunately contacted him like a week before he was flying back to leave the United States. And had we waited another week, he would have been gone and he wouldn't be coming back. So keep up to date. Like if you think that we've had an interest, or you have an interest, you may want to say, by the way, I need to know before this date due to either visas or flight plans or whatever. And I think that's really important to know, because otherwise we don't know that and we're just working on our own plan.
Communication is definitely key when working with recruiters, and making sure that start dates, all that is in line, and that process goes smoothly. I believe those are all the questions we have. So wanted to just say so much thanks to our 3 employers here. You all were amazing and providing your perspectives. I know these are kind of from your experiences and your perspectives, your organizations, but it's very helpful to hear different ways that y'all are looking at things, ways students can stand out, and ways to navigate the process. So let's give a virtual round of applause, and I can give a real round of applause. Thank you, Joshua, Jessica, and Damini. We really appreciate your time being here for the past hour. And then for students, if you have remaining questions, feel free. Are you 3 of you welcome if they reach out to you directly if they're interested? So feel free to contact myself or Yasir, and we can provide you with their contact information if you're interested in learning more specifically about either any of these 3 organizations and working there. And then this concludes the end of day 2 of the International Career Summit. So again, thank you to the three of you for participating in this panel, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yasir. Thanks, Jess, Jessica, and Joshua. It's really nice meeting you.
You as
Have a
well.
Yes.
happy
thank-
Tuesday.
Kurt, we appreciate it.